So this is the official LFGHO Summit, and I'll quickly give an intro on what we're expecting in the next 2 hours so you can get a good idea and you can get right back to hacking. So first up, we're going to start off with giving you an overview of Go and just how decentralized stablecoins work. After that, we'll be doing a short panel on DAO governance, especially on how Aave community shapes the future of Go. We're going to then talk about the RWA facilitation with Go as our third panel. And that will be the summit. So the first up is to make sure everybody has a really good understanding of Go and decentralized stablecoins. I want to bring on Emilio to talk about all these things. So without further ado, let's welcome Emilio on stage.
Hello, everyone. I can talk now, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Hello, everyone. So my name is Emilio. I'm not sure if everything is okay because I already have the slides shared full screen. I guess so. For those who don't know me, I am currently VP for DeFi in Avara, and I am responsible for leading the engineering and innovation for the DeFi team, specifically Aave Labs, that works with the Aave protocol as a contributor to the Aave community, and also builds and contributes to other products as well. So one of the latest things that Aave Labs has built is Go, which is the main subject of this hackathon. So Go is a decentralized stablecoin integrated with the Aave protocol. And the nature of the stablecoin, we will discuss about it later, and how the basic design behind it. The main topic that I want to focus on, which is a topic that is particularly important, especially lately, because Go since launch has been facing a bit of challenges from the peg aspect, is how are we working on helping the stability of Go, and what's cooking in terms of new feature for guaranteeing that Go keeps a stable value over time. So let's go further. The first topic I want to talk about is what's stablecoin. I guess everyone listening is more or less aware of what a stablecoin is. But in general, a general definition of a stablecoin that we can give is a digital asset that closely tracks the value of an underlying real-world asset through generation, redemption, and stability. This means that we are mostly accustomed to call stablecoins USD-pegged stablecoins, but that's not the only kind of stablecoins. You can have stablecoins pegged to the gold value. You can have stablecoins pegged to a stock price. You can have stablecoins pegged to ETH or to Bitcoin, right? So the difference is that those are synthetically generated, so they are not actually backed by the real asset. It could be potentially, but then not only, but they are also backed through other meaningful mechanisms that we will discuss in the next slide. So what are these mechanisms for which stablecoins are usually generated? I would say that we can classify these mechanisms in three main categories. One is over-collateralized, the other one is centrally controlled, and the other one, which is a bit famous, let's say like this, because of things that happened in the recent years, is the algorithmic. So over-collateralized is the category at which Go belongs, and it's basically the asset is generated against a certain collateral, which is guaranteed for the issuance of the asset. So whenever this asset is generated, a certain amount of collateral is locked within the system through which this asset is generated, and this collateral acts as a guarantee for the value of the asset itself. The system essentially ensures that a generation and redemption at $1 is always possible, as long no bad debt exists and the over collateralization of the system is maintained. The second one is centrally controlled, which means that there is usually a centrally controlled entity that handles generation and redemption of the assets against the real assets. So typical examples of these are USDC, USDT, which are usually generated against USD supplies. So users usually give Tether or Circle real USD to be able to use this USD on chain. So they receive what is basically an IOU of the dollars that were deposited in the form of USDC and USDT. And the third one is it can use a variety of different mechanisms to algorithmically attempt to track the price of the underlying asset, in this case dollars, without maintaining any form of collateralization, centrally controlled or decentralized through decentralized protocols. Unfortunately, until now, no design has been found that is actually able to maintain a reliable peg and actually survive using algorithmic approaches, but we never know, in the future something else might actually appear or might be developed and actually manage to achieve this goal. So how does, let's focus for the purpose of this particular talk with over collateralized stable coins, and mentioning as well going forward centrally controlled. So how do over collateralized stable coins keep their peg? So we can classify the mechanism to sustain the peg of a stable coin in two main categories: soft peg mechanisms and hard peg mechanisms. So soft peg mechanisms are mechanisms that usually indirectly affect the value of the asset and the peg against the underlying. The typical example are the borrow rates, but there is also generation or redemption at a fixed price. This is how GHO actually works and is integrated within the Aave protocol. GHO within the Aave protocol doesn't have an oracle. It's like the value of GHO is fixed to $1. So whenever you generate new GHO, you basically have the opportunity to get them at $1. Whenever you redeem GHO for the underlying, for the collateral, you will redeem it at the value also of $1, whatever is the value in the market is. This basically helps the peg because it creates an arbitrage opportunity. So if the value of GHO is above 1 on the market, like there is incentives for people to actually mint GHO and sell on the market for a profit. And when GHO is below peg, there is an incentive for people to buy from the market and repay their debt, or eventually to liquidate at a further profit than the sole liquidation bonus. The rates I already mentioned. So usually the rates are used as a way to incentivize or disincentivize further minting of the stable coin. So whenever the asset is below peg, interest rates actually usually rise to disincentivize further mintings and help the price recovery. Whenever the asset is above peg, it means that there is demand on the market. So the borrow rates are low to incentivize further minting and allow users to capture the opportunity that I mentioned before. And then there is another approach that is, for example, used by Liquidity. That is quite peculiar. Liquidity doesn't have a interest rate, a borrow rate for LUSD. But what they have in exchange is generation and redemption fees. So every time like someone mints a new debt or redeems the stablecoin for the collateral, a fee is paid, and this fee adapts depending on what's the price of the market of the asset on the market. So it rises or decreases whether or not we want to incentivize or disincentivize further mintings. So these are the soft peg mechanisms. The hard peg mechanisms are, for example, direct redeemability against an underlying asset or a stablecoin with a stronger peg, which is what, like, for example, centrally controlled stablecoins do, or, for example, what Maker does through the peg stability module, and what Aave will do as well with GHO through the GHO stability module. Or another hard peg mechanism is the direct redeemability against the most under collateralized positions. So again, this is how, like, another peculiarity of liquidity USD. So basically, when the asset goes below peg, there is an incentive for people to actually redeem the stablecoin against the least under collateralized position. So there is incentives to go and repay the debt for the least under collateralized position in exchange for the collateral, for $1 worth of collateral for each LUSD that is redeemed, minus the redemption fee that I mentioned before. So let's focus a bit on the borrow rates, which is the main topic of this talk, because, like, we are going to describe what is the current strategy for GHO and what are future strategies that we want to adopt for GHO and for helping maintaining the peg over time. So at the moment, GHO uses a governance-controlled mechanism for borrow rates. In DAI, this is called stability fee. So what happens is that the DAO basically manages the borrow rates and decides what the proper borrow rates are depending on the state of the market. So if the asset is under peg, the governance decides to rise, acting a bit like a central bank or a central organization, decides to rise the interest rates for the borrowing, making the borrowing more expensive and incentivizing repayments. Or if it's a bull peg, it makes the borrowing cheaper to incentivize further minting and helping dropping the price on the market. Or algorithmically controlled. So there is an interest rate curve that defines the interest rate of the asset depending on market condition. One example here is CRV USD, where in CRV USD, this particular formula is applied by using the peg keeper. That is another mechanism that they have to help maintaining the peg, to understand what's the situation on the market for CRV-USD, and this dynamically adapts, increasing or decreasing the interest rate to make it cheaper or more expensive to borrow. We have something similar on the Aave protocol for assets, though, that are supplied. So the mechanism is similar, but the concept is different, because, like, the assets that are supplied, it works on a strict demand and supply relationship rather than evaluating market conditions. But conceptually, they are very similar. So the interest rates fluctuate and are variable with very high variability. So as I mentioned, GHO is currently using a governance control mechanism, which is the mechanism that was released. Was active since the release. There are a few problems with governance controlled rates. The first problem is that it requires a lot of governance overhead. So there is a lot of modeling needed, participation for people to vote, entities that are able to decide what the actual proper interest rate is. And it's also very slow to enact and react, because, like, it's slow. It usually takes days for a proposal to be approved, voted, and executed. And it's also slower to react, because if there are sudden changes in market conditions, then it requires, again, to bootstrap our whole process again to actually adapt the rates further. And it's also very hard to estimate properly. But also, by analyzing the only algorithmic interest rate approach that there is on the market, that is CRV USD, what we want is not what CRV USD does, which brings a lot of variability. So there is uncertainty and lack of predictability on what the borrowers are going to pay, which is very similar, again, to what Aave offers with other stable coins. We want something that is a trade-off between the maintaining the peg and also predictability. So we want something that is actually that at least the borrower can have an idea of where the interest rates are directed, if they are an upward trend or downward trend, and an estimate, for example, of how much they are going to spend in the I don't know, in 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year from the time of the borrowing. So the initial idea that we had was to use PIDs. So PIDs, it's are mathematical structures, very, very common in control theory, and they are basically used in general when we want to stabilize a certain parameter of a system around a certain value. So what happens is you very usually applied in industrial machines and applications. So what happens is that we usually have given a certain error ET, we have one component that is proportional to the error, one component that is the integral that basically tracks the historical of the error, and another component that is derivative that basically tracks the trend of the error. So how quickly the error is moving from the current value to the next value, and of the value, the target value that we are actually aiming for. So initially we plan to use this. This would have required an oracle, which would have given a TWAP of the past prices to basically estimate the historical error, and also use derivative approximation to basically approximate from the last n prices how is the trend, the acceleration of the variability. We tried to apply the PID module. It felt very limiting. We were not completely satisfied with the results that we were getting, because it's the PID module are very limited. As I mentioned, again, you have the only variable that you can check is the error against the target value, and then the only components that you can actually play with to try and approximate the value the best way that you can is just the proportional, derivative, and integral parts of the equation. So it felt very limiting and didn't perform the way we wanted. We wanted something that actually would be able to give not an actual rate, but a rate of increase or decrease of the borrow rate. So it would basically tell how fast we need to rise the interest rate to bring the asset back to the peg, and how fast we need to eventually decrease if the asset, increase if the asset is below peg, and decrease if the asset is above peg. So rather than outputting directly a borrow rate, we want something that would output a rate of increase of decrease of the borrow rate, and the system would update the borrow rate like continuously, depending on this rate of increase and decrease. This way, we give the borrowers the possibility of understanding what's the trend in the interest rates, and eventually how fast this rate is changing, so that they can have an idea of how much they are spending. So this is because we basically, with Go, we want to have the Aave protocol offering a different protocol than other stablecoins that are already listed on Aave, that are based on full variable interest rates. So the interest rates can be 3% today and 64% tomorrow. There is really no guarantee of what or capacity to predict what the interest rate will be. So we have been evaluating other options rather than PIDs, and what we realized is that we actually needed more control inputs, not just the error, but we also want the ability to embed into mechanism like an evaluation of the current market conditions, an evaluation possibly of the state of the GSM. So what's the ratio between the assets that are supplied in the GSM, because this tells us how much we can expect to sustain the current peg, for example. So we decided to use another technique that is very, very common in control logic, that is called in control theory, that is called fuzzy logic. So what's fuzzy logic? I would say that it's a very novel application of control theory to blockchain, because I'm not aware of anyone using fuzzy logic for interest rate controllers. So it's a form like you basically have a logic that it's not just 0 or 1, so not just true or false, but it's based basically on degrees of truth. So the idea is that you have input values that are hard values called crisp values, and then you map those crisp values in sets that define the state of the system, or the belonging to a certain set, depending on the value itself. So these sets usually go from 0 to 1. So you can, let's imagine, for example, temperature. You can define a temperature as high, very high, medium, or low. So you have, I don't know, 20 degrees, for example, has a certain membership of 0.5 within the medium set, and a very low membership on the high and on the low, which means that basically this allows to approximate a bit like the way humans reason, right? For us, temperature is never, like, first of all, is subjective, so it's never super cold or super hot for everyone. But also we usually approximate values in a way that are actually like not hard true or old false, but there are usually degrees of membership and evaluation. So the idea with Go is to use this particular technique to be able to approximate the peg and the way that the interest rates need to react. So how does fuzzy logic work? We have basically three major components with this particular technology. One is falsification, then the definition of the fuzzy sets and the rules, and the third one is the falsification. So once you apply you falsify your values, so you pass from hard readings to values of membership within the sets, and you apply the rules, then you basically get the output of the rules, and from the output of the rules you defuzify the value to get a hard number. In the case of Go, what we are going to get is the rate of increase or decrease of the current borrow rate. So again, falsification. So the simplest value that we can use to understand falsification is the current price, right, of Go. So let's say the current price of Go is 0.98. We define a set which defines the peg as very much off peg, average off peg, in peg, average off peg on the below peg, and very much off peg below peg. And with these sets, the current price will belong to certain sets. So 98 is, we can say, very much below peg with membership 1. So we can say, for example, is the lowest value that we are willing to accept within the sets, right? So we can apply after that we defined these rules that essentially gives us how the system should react based on the fuzzy values that we get. So one rule, for example, could be if the distance from the peg value is high, like in the example before, 0.98, and the value is negative, the rate of acceleration of the interest rate is very high. So that is a rule that defines how the acceleration of the interest rate should behave depending on the state of the peg. So the third step is, so for example, in the example that I did before, 0.98 is very much off peg. So this rule would be satisfied with value 1, which is essentially the maximum. This gives the maximum rate of acceleration. And the last step is the falsification. So translating the values, the outputs given by the formulas to actual values of acceleration. So again, we define some sets that map the results of the rules, and from these sets, they will we essentially obtain actual values that we apply to the borrow rates. So there are a variety. We can discuss a lot. Like, it would require way more time to actually describe the fuzzy logic in detail. But let's say that this should be enough to give a basic understanding of how we plan to apply this mechanism to the Go borrow rates. So the interesting thing compared to PID is that while in PID you have only one input, which is the current price. With fuzzy logic, you can apply a variety of inputs that all contribute at the end to actually decide what the rate of acceleration of the peg should be. So, for example, the first three that you read here, distance from the peg, historical of the distance from the peg, and rate of acceleration, these three will actually map exactly what the PID was mapping before. But in addition to that, we can add, for example, balances of the GSM, state of the secondary market, or really anything that we can possibly bring on chain. So, for example, an oracle that gives us the state of the market liquidity of Go across centralized exchange. If we have an oracle that gives that, we can write a rule that actually will actually contribute together with all the other rules in defining what the rate should be. This gives us essentially the flexibility to cover anything that we need to basically manage the interest rates depending on the state of the peg. The rules will be defined on chain, so the contract will actually have all the rules that will be, and those rules will be it will be possible to be extended by the governance. So the governance will be able to add more rules with eventually more input values. And the approaches to the falsification, so there are a variety of mechanisms that you can translate the output of the rules to actual values. Also, this will be it will be possible to customize, and the governance can decide eventually by monitoring the system if other methods of falsification can actually be better suited for the state of the market and the current usage of Go. So what are the next steps? We are currently building a model in Python to simulate this rate mechanism. we will run this model in Python against the historical of the peg. Soon the GSM will also go live. Unfortunately, will not help at the beginning because like the state of Go is currently below peg, so the GSM really helps when the asset is above peg. So after that, there will be a stage of validation by the governance to understand if the governance accept this solution. And after that, and after running again the simulation, we will execute the on-chain proposal to activate the new interest rate model, and then monitor the performance in production to essentially be able to evaluate if the initial set of rules was targeted properly, if the diversification that was chosen was targeted properly. Therefore, we will monitor the performance of the default implementation of the strategy to adjust it accordingly depending on how it performs. So in conclusion, stability is a very, very complicated topic, as demonstrated by many events in the past. It is very hard for a stablecoin to maintain the peg of all times. We should accept that stablecoins can lose the peg from time to time. It basically happened to all the stablecoins, even the centrally controlled ones, at a certain phase of their life. This is part of the life of a stablecoin. The automated mechanisms usually provide faster response times compared to centralizing or governance-controlled mechanisms, and that this, of course, will help Go reach and maintain the peg, but this also cannot be the only mechanism we rely on to actually reliably maintain Go on peg. Use cases and growth are always very important to incentivize people to participate in using the asset, in holding the asset, and make sure that the asset is actually the asset can scale to the full of its capabilities. So that's it. I don't really know if I'm on time, over time, because there is no timer here, but that covers everything, and I would say thanks everyone. I don't know if I can accept questions. Otherwise, yeah, that's it.
Emilio, that was actually very amazing and detailed. There actually are a lot of questions, but we are over time. So my request would be for you to go to ETHGlobal.tv and just answer those questions in the chat, because there's a lot of questions about how the peg works and how you actually think about the mechanism for getting all of the redemptions and just kind of how the facilitators and PAD control works. So there's like really good 4 or 5 questions. If you can just go to ETHGlobal.tv and reply in the chat,
yeah,
I'm sure
we'll go over
there. Attendees will appreciate that. So thanks again. Really amazing to kind of have a deeper understanding of how the protocol works, which will give all the 800 plus hackers a good idea for what they can do. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.